Okay, so co-production. Uh, what is it? What makes it a success? And why should we even be doing it? So, co-production is essentially doing with an equal partnership. It's about recognizing that people have lived experience, that people have a breadth of knowledge that we can tap into. We'll have our lens, we'll have our values, but actually, if we're going to be designing something which is going to impact tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, then we need to be really kind of cognizant of actually what matters to people, what do they value. So it's the importance of just recognizing people's views and recognize them in framing the problem from the very, very beginning and being part of designing the problem and designing the solution for it. The idea being is you're then more likely to get better outcomes from where it is you're looking to design because it'll be more reflective of what people's actual needs are. So it's very much focused on doing with, not doing to. Doing for, or doing for rather, it tends to be around engaging and involving people. That's not quite the same as co-production. Doing to is where we're trying to fix people, where we think we know best. And that actually infers that people are quite passive recipients of something, which isn't really helpful and doesn't really empower people. The whole idea of co-production is it's supposed to give people resource to make changes. In fact, co-production is a really good technique to help us achieve health equity. If we remind ourselves that health equity is essentially about giving people the resources they need to realise the health outcomes that matter to them. So let's think about that for a second. Giving people the resource they need to achieve the health outcomes that matter to them. So surely, in that sense, co-production is about giving people the resource to be able to make decisions centered around designing healthcare systems that matter to them. So it's exactly the same principle. And in that sense, co-production is an incredibly important vehicle for achieving health equity. So we looked at why we're going to do it. I suppose what makes it successful, there are quite a lot of things you could cover here. Let me try and summarize this. So I suppose the golden rule really is starting with people, keeping it really, really simple, starting with people and asking out there in the ethers who's got a vested interest in this problem. Literally giving people the opportunity to say, right, we think we have a problem here. Who would like to talk about it first? Secondly, around trying to get an even balance between the people and the professionals. Continue developing new relationships as well with people, so never kind of settling for the same people again and again. Being prepared to go out into spaces where you wouldn't normally go, where you could find people, and not expecting people to come to you. Going where people feel comfortable that they can open up and feel confident. I think the other thing as well about co-production actually is that it's not at all very transactional, it's very relational. So it's all about developing a rapport, developing relations with people. And I think for some people, I think that's probably why they find it quite tricky. Healthcare commissioning can be quite transactional. But co-production is about taking a kind of appreciative inquiry approach. So asking people questions, open-ended questions. There's an element of coaching about co-production, which we're going to look at in a bit. And it's quite creative and does need some skills. But I mean, anyone can do it. And actually, really, I would say we've been involved in co-production, all of us, in some capacity, whether that be at work or even at home. We have been involved in that. And when we go through what the components are, you'll see why that's the case. And then the other thing about co-production is, I suppose, trying to avoid being absolutely perfect and to get things right. Actually, real co-production works well if the people in that team are given a license just to stuff things up and get things wrong. I think we just live in this kind of society where we're just expected to get things spot on and bang on right all of the time. Clearly in healthcare, things are a little bit different because it's very much dominated by clinical quality and clinical safety. And yeah, if you're doing surgery or saving someone's life, doing open heart surgery, then you can only afford to get things right once. But we're not talking about that, are we? We're talking about designing healthcare systems. The co-production works well in many settings. And then it's about developing evidence that matters to people as well. The other, I suppose, things that do make co-production really successful is around not stifling people in the group, not having too many expectations, giving them some freedom to be able to explore things, giving them a framework, but giving people the freedom to be able to operate with some freedom to develop their confidence. So not stifling innovation. That's something that I think we're a bit guilty of. Does need some leadership as well. Obviously, you need leadership. You need some leadership to champion what co-production is and how it differs to the things we've done in the past. And with that comes investment in resource. So if you're giving people resource in co-production to be able to design solutions and give them the resources around that to help them design solutions and make decisions, you need to back that up with some resource. In the same way that you or I are gifted with the resource to do that as well. So we need to be prepared to do that. Recognising people as assets. Everyone's got a capability. Everyone has talents. Everyone has something to offer. So it's about recognising that. So in the health equity assessment tool training, we put a challenge in there, and the challenge is around identifying a perceived problem or opportunity to change something or improve something. Forming a co-production group, and we're going to look at how we go about doing that next, the practical things you can do to prepare for that. Start to have inclusive conversations, which we're going to look at shortly now as well. And then what happens is that once you've started to do that, once you've started to do that, then you can start to think about doing your health equity assessment, because you'll be pulling the things you found from that and feeding it into that assessment. And that's we'll look at in the other sessions in terms of what the health equity assessment will look like because of that. So the prep around health equity, the co-production framework, there's 5 key components to this. So one around the who, the what, the how, the when, and the where. Those 5 key questions. So who's going to be involved? How do you go about identifying them? What barriers are there to people actually co-producing? That's the first one. The what, so what you're actually going to do. What are the outcomes and actions you want from that? Are you going to do it through focus groups, through a workshop, or through panels of some kind? So that's the what. The how. The how is you'll come with a blank agenda. You'll be clear on the views, how the views are going to shape the direction of what it is you want to do. You'll complete a co-production tick list to make sure that the areas covered have been done. You'll get evidence of the decisions that are being made, and you'll have an agreed set of actions, plans, goals, and outcomes. The when, so when are you going to go about doing needs assessments? What's the expert's experiences? Is there going to be the involvement in recruitment and selection? We need to do interviews for the co-production. Is it going to be a bit less formal than that? Do you need to create awareness of it, and how and when? And do you need to deliver training? So hopefully this video will help in that respect, but maybe you might need some more in-depth training. And then how can the views inform what needs to be done? So can everyone contribute to the documents, the policies, the specifications? And if so, how? Can everyone co-create the actual outcomes and the actions that are centered around responding to the problem at heart? And then when are you going to go about supporting the quality monitoring? Are you going to be doing things like surveys, sharing experiences after you've implemented the idea, reminding that reviews are always welcome, even if one is not actually offered as well? And where, finally, where do you go that's comfortable? Do you do it in a lovely office in the Civic Centre in Wolverhampton, or do you go out in the community, find a community centre, go to somewhere local that people feel comfortable? If it's hot enough, do you want to do it outside? So it's the who, what, how, when, and where. This is going to be in the pack, by the way, in the link below. If you so don't worry about taking notes. So that sets out the how you can go about preparing for co-production. When it comes to actual co-production itself, there are some things that can be done, some techniques that can be done to actually help you get the most out of people's views. So there's some tools and techniques you can use, which we're going to go through now, and they're actually centered around coaching techniques. So it's centered around something called the GROW model, which looks at goals, reality, options, and the way. So the goals, what do you want? The reality of where we are now, where you are now. The options of what we could do, and the way of what will we do. And in the coaching kind of context, the GROW model, which is sometimes called the T-GROW model, centers around agreeing on what the present situation is. So what do we want to talk? What do you want to talk about, and what's the problem that you're having? And when we're having a basic coaching conversation, it looks at things like the present situation. What do you want to talk about? What's the problem that you're having? The desired situation, so asking questions like, what would you like to have happened? Is there anything else about that? And if you did know, what would you do? And then it centers around the actions. So what needs to happen? What could you do about this? What could you do that you haven't tried before? What else could you do? Who do you admire? And what can we learn from them? What are you going to do? And when will you do it by? And actually in co-production, we can use exactly the same methods. So if you imagine if we had a host of a co-production group, we could literally just slightly tweak those questions in a co-production environment. So if you imagine you've got a host asking coaching style questions to get the co-production group to help frame how they're going to approach something. So all we're literally doing is swapping one word, and that's swapping the you to a we, and that is it. So the present situation, what do we need to talk about? What's the problem we have? The desired situation, what would we like to have happen? Is there anything else about that? And then the actions, what could we do about this? What could we do that we haven't tried? What else could we do? What are we going to do, and when will we do it by? So you've literally just changed one word. You've changed the you to a we, and yeah, it should work quite well in the context of getting people to try and open up and talk about problems. If the co-production group is seemingly struggling and they're saying to you, "I don't know," to a lot of the answers, a lot of the questions, then that's okay. That's fine. You can ask questions like, what could we do to find out? We don't know. Who do we know that does know? What would they do? And if we don't know, but if we did, what would we say? So the trick is it's more important about asking the right questions in co-production than it is of actually coming up with a solution. That's the thing that needs a bit of courage and some patience. So yeah, always be careful around asking the right questions. Way more important than coming up with what we think is the right solution, because in many cases it might not be. So I suppose a challenge for you really is to think of a situation, either at work ideally, or at home if you're more comfortable, and think about testing that grow technique where you're asking those coaching style conversations. And that's it. In the next video, we're going to be looking at how you can build on this preparation part around the heat tool, especially looking at co-production we have today, and then how that's going to then kind of help inform you starting to frame what you're going to do in your health equity assessment. That's great. Cheers. Take care now. See you then.